Hello, I'm KidMaJunior, and Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 is the video game I have played the most. For context, I only completed it twice, once in 2006 when I purchased the original release, and again in 2012 when I purchased the Greatest Hits release. However, I have invested time into it for over 17 years by modding. I began in September 2007 and have been making videos of those mods for my YouTube channel ever since then. I can tell you about my personal experience with Budokai 3 and why this game means so much to me. Other fans like me have already told the world about their personal experience with Budokai 3 and why it means so much to them. Budokai 3's producer himself has told the world about his personal experience with Dragon Ball and why the last game in the trilogy means so much to him. In that regard, there probably isn't much that I can add to what you might have already heard before. Despite Budokai 3 being released in 2004, I'm still a big fan who enjoys both reading and hearing about the game. I especially enjoy the trivia. What I've never heard anyone say is when the world first knew about Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3, particularly when it was first announced and seen. Dragon Ball video games that have been released within the last few years have had this part of their history well documented, but Budokai 3's remained somewhat of a mystery. Even websites that went deeper into Dragon Ball hardly discussed the game's development. There were magazines, online articles, forums, and even videos that each shed some light on the answer. This information and much more had been out there for over 20 years, just waiting to be found by someone willing to look for it. I began to think no one ever would, so I did. I began researching the game on March 26, 2023, and after spending almost 20 months of my spare time, I can now tell you when Budokai 3 was first announced and seen. To begin, I looked on mainstream websites for any announcements about Budokai 3. Its entry on the website Wikipedia didn't have any relevant information. As Budokai 3 was released in 2004, I looked on gaming websites that were present around that time. This led me to the website IGN, which had several articles about it. On April 28, 2004, editor Jeremy Dunham reported that Atari's European branch had preemptively announced Budokai 3 as the next installment to be developed by the company Dimps. On April 30th, editor David Adams reported that Atari had officially confirmed Budokai 3 would release in North America. On September 2nd, editor Mark Ryan Salee reported his initial impressions of the game after playing a preview at GameStars Live in London. Of note, Mr. Salee emphasized that character movement was stiff and unresponsive. On October 25th, Mr. Adams reported that Budokai 3's final build was ready for shipping and the game was scheduled to release on November 16th. On November 17th, Mr. Dunham published his review of the game. I wasn't familiar with GameStars Live and looked further into it. The earliest online record I could find about the event was on the website Eurogamer. On January 16, 2004, editor Tom Bramwell reported that GameStars Live, a consumer's games show, was scheduled to be held at the Excel exhibition facility in London Docklands from September 1st through the 5th. The next website I looked on was GameSpot. On August 9, 2004, editor Benjamin Golsey reported that Atari had announced a special event to be held on August 18th at the PlayStation Store in the Metreon, a shopping and entertainment center located in San Francisco, California. 2 groups of 50 people would be allowed to play a demo of the game, and fans in Dragon Ball cosplay wouldn't only receive preferential treatment in line, but have the opportunity to challenge the Budokai series producer himself, Daisuke Uchiyama. On November 15th, editor Ryan Davis published his review of the game. I was also unfamiliar with the PlayStation Store and looked into its current status. This led me back to GameSpot, which had published an update on February 13, 2009. The GameSpot staff reported that the store would be closing due to Sony opting not to renew its lease, which was set to expire on March 31, 2009. I visited the website Shopping Metreon and found that their store directory no longer had any mention of the PlayStation Store. I wanted to look through the website GamePro, but it had since been shut down. According to Wikipedia, this occurred on December 5, 2011. Another gaming website I recalled being popular in the 2000s was GameSpy. Although it hadn't produced any content since February 21, 2013, it was still active and had a related article. On September 24, 2004, editor Phil Theobald published an interview he conducted with Daisuke Uchiyama about the game. In the introduction, Mr. Theobald confirmed this interview was conducted while Mr. Uchiyama was at the Metreon for the demo event. In his answers, Mr. Uchiyama elaborated on some additions to the Budokai series, as well as the source material's appeal in general. On the last page, there was a photo of him in cosplay standing in front of a large screen. Although only a portion of the screen behind him could be seen, it included Goku, the Dragon Ball Z logo, and the title August version in plain white text. I looked through the screenshots for the game and found that the images couldn't be viewed anymore. However, the upload date for the first screenshot was June 22, 2004. As for the videos, there was only a single trailer with the upload date September 23, 2004, which couldn't be viewed either. I used the web browser extension Flash Player Enabler to try to play the files, but they couldn't be downloaded. I also checked the web page's Uniform Resource Locator, or URL, on the website Internet Archive, specifically the Wayback Machine, but no video was archived. After searching through various gaming websites, I found an announcement on Kikizu Archives. On May 7, 2004, director Adam Dorey reported that Atari would be presenting at that year's Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, at the Los Angeles Convention Center in Los Angeles, California. In particular, he listed Budokai 3 as one of the games the publisher would promote there. I searched for any coverage of Atari at E3 2004, which directed me to the website Giant Bomb. It had an entry for the event that stated it was held from May 11th through the 13th. It also identified every game that was presented there. While Atari was among the publishers present, Budokai 3 wasn't listed among the games they showcased. Giant Bomb had a photo gallery of the event, so I searched through it, but didn't find any mention of the game. From this first round of research, I began a basic timeline mapping announcements and milestones about Budokai 3 up until it was released on November 16, 2004. Sometimes you just need passion, and that's something that fans have in abundance. Not finding as much information as I hoped looking on mainstream websites, I shifted to Fansites. I looked on the website Dragon Ball Wiki, and while its entry about Budokai 3 was more in-depth than Wikipedia, it didn't indicate how it was announced either. I then moved on to perhaps the most well-known Dragon Ball fansite in English, the website Kanzenshuu. This fansite launched on April 1, 2012 as a merger of the Dragon Ball fansites Daizenshu EX and Kanzentai. Thankfully, all of the news that was posted on Daizenshu EX was carried over onto the new site. The earliest mention of Budokai 3 I found was published April 29, 2004 by webmaster Vegito EX. He reported that the member Zyx had provided a link to Budokai 3's strategy guide on April 21st, which was before the game was officially announced. The post included a hyperlink to the guide on the website EB Games, which redirected me to the GameStop website. I used the Wayback Machine to view an archive of the webpage and found that EB Games had listed this Prima strategy guide for pre-order as early as April 14th. On May 8th, Vegito EX reported that the website The Magic Box had posted 3 new images of the game showing the characters Broly and Cooler. That website was now defunct. On June 11th, he reported that recent screenshots and videos had confirmed new characters for the game. A character list was provided, but no links were included. On July 15th, he reported that the Magic Box had posted more new images of the game. On August 6th, he reported that a demo would be available to play at the PlayStation Store in San Francisco, California on August 18th. Of note, his post included a link to download a flyer for the event, but it was now defunct, likely due to the Fansite merge. On August 13th, he reported that GamePro would stream a new exclusive video of the game at noon on August 14th. This post included a transcribed interview from GamePro with Daisuke Uchiyama in addition to a link of the webpage. The page was archived and could be viewed via the Wayback Machine. The feature stated the video would premiere at the Wizard World Convention being held from August 13th through the 15th in Chicago, Illinois. It also advertised that the October issue of the magazine GamePro with additional details about Budokai 3 would be available August 24th. On August 14th, Vegito EX reported that the trailer GamePro had premiered didn't provide new information. On August 29th, he reported that Budokai 3 would have an original theme song and included a transcribed excerpt from Hironobu Kageyama's own personal blog that described his experience with the new song. The link to Mr. Kageyama's blog was now defunct, but an archive of the journal entry could be seen via the Wayback Machine. The last update published before the game released was on November 12th. Vegito EX reported that he had extracted the audio files from his copy of Budokai 3 and provided a list of every character whose name was announced in-game. In particular, he shared that he was most surprised by the inclusion of the character Bulma. Apart from general news, Kanzenshuu also had a press archive pertaining to Dragon Ball media. I looked through this catalog but only found the game mentioned once. Vegito EX transcribed an article from issue 23 of the North American manga anthology Shonen Jump, in which Mr. Uchiyama was interviewed again about the upcoming game. As Daizenshuu EX had provided a flyer for the demo event, I sent a message to the staff at Kanzenshuu asking if they had a copy of it for reference. As of this recording, they haven't responded. I cross-referenced other sources for more information about the Wizard World Convention and found a post published August 11, 2004 on the website Anime News Network. They reported that the company Funimation would also present at Wizard World Chicago and Atari would be showcasing content for their other upcoming anime games. I next looked on the website Comic Vine, which identified itself as the largest comic book wiki. I found that it had a chronology of both Weekly Jump and V-Jump issue covers. After looking through every issue with a cover date from 2003 until 2005, I found that the first mention of Budokai 3, titled Z3 in Japan, was in the June 2004 issue of V-Jump, released on April 21, 2004. This was the earliest publication I had found so far that officially announced Budokai 3, so I wanted to ensure the street date of the magazine was correct. Fortunately, this particular issue included a promotional card, Stronghold the Moving Fortress, of the official card game Yu-Gi-Oh!, and as a result, its release date was also documented by the fansite Yugipedia. Yugipedia listed the release date as April 21st and cited its primary source as the official V-Jump website for a capture on April 20th, 2004. I found that DBZ3 was mentioned again on the cover of the July issue, released on May 21st, and the cover of the August issue, released June 21st. There were additional issues that mentioned Z3 on their covers, but these were released after November 16th. Two noteworthy issues, however, were for March and April 2005, which each included alternate cover art you could slip into the game case. Curious to know what details of the game were announced in V-Jump, I searched for any archives of the issues. This led me to the fansite V-Jump Archives, but I found that it had only archived 2 issues from 2004, neither of which contained details about Z3. I searched on other fansites for additional information and came across the BitTorrent website Neon Torrents. There, member Impact shared their acquisition of a promotional copy of the PAL version for Budokai 3. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any details on when this disc was originally issued out. I looked through the website's serial station, but found that it had only cataloged the retail versions of the game. I next cross-referenced the ISO serial numbers for the various versions on the website Redump, but the only difference I found was that the Taikenbon release of Z3 was documented there. This referred to the trial version of Z3 that was issued to retailers so that potential customers could demo the game. I had been aware of this version for over a decade and even reached out to the staff at Daizenshuu EX back in 2011 for advice on how to find a copy of it for my collection. I found various images of this version online, like on the website Okfree, but couldn't find a date for when it was first issued out. I then searched for promotional material about the game and came across the website Preserve Games. The webmaster made a post in 2018 sharing that they had acquired several promotional discs, which included a PlayStation merchandise DVD that listed Budokai 3 among various games. Although the post assured that the disc would be archived, I wasn't able to find any follow-up about it. I also couldn't find any documentation regarding this merchandise DVD elsewhere. I noticed that the disc had a copyright date of 2005, which implied that any content about Budokai 3 shown here would have likely been captured after the game was released. At this point, I realized that most fan sites that were present when the game was being developed had since shut down. Regardless, there was one name that regularly appeared in my early search results, the fansite Drainet. Fortunately, various web pages from Drainet were archived on the Wayback Machine. I looked through each one and found that the earliest mention of Budokai 3 was on an update posted June 16, 2004. It provided supposed details about the game from an individual purported to either be at a DIMPS or Atari office. This information had no official source, and several of the details mentioned, such as there being an Ozaru character in the game, had no evidence. The next update posted August 8th was another Q&A with no official source. The update posted August 11th reported that a limited edition of the game was available for pre-order per GameStop. The update posted August 12th shared additional information regarding Funimation's presence at Wizard World Chicago. The update posted August 14th provided several links to a trailer of the game released by Atari the same day, and a low-resolution screenshot of it could still be opened. An update posted August 16th shared that the member Blue 7 Eve had supposedly attended a demo of the game held in Lake City, Colorado, and announced what characters would be included. This information had no official source, and I couldn't find details about another event that had showcased a demo aside from the PlayStation Store and GameStars Live. The next update posted August 21st reported that the gallery of screenshots was updated. An image of what appeared to be an early character select screen could still be opened. An archive of the gallery was captured September 1st, and while most of the images couldn't be viewed anymore, two of them appeared to show a monitor from an event with a board providing instructions on how to play the game. The next update posted August 22nd shared scanned pages from GamePro issue 193. On the update posted August 24th, a quote from the member Andrew was shared, indicating that he had participated at the demo event held at the PlayStation Store and won a limited edition of the game. A low-resolution image of the box art with Mr. Uchiyama's autograph could still be opened. On an update posted September 11th, a screenshot of a preview menu was shared along with a transcribed interview that the magazine Tips and Tricks had with Mr. Uchiyama. On the update posted November 5th, it was reported that a French magazine had mentioned the character Bojack would be in the game. The post also credited the member Vral for providing a scanned and English translation of the magazine article. There was a link to view the scan, but it wasn't archived. Using the Wayback Machine, I found an archive of a thread on the fansite DBZ Game Info that had discussed the magazine scan. Unfortunately, no image was archived. I followed up with an extensive search, but couldn't find the name of any French magazine that had reported Bojack. Drainet had a page with the contact information of its webmaster Jan, and two different email addresses were archived. I sent an email to each one asking if they still had copies of the image for reference, but never received a response from the first one and discovered the second one was defunct. The last update posted about new media before the game release was on November 10th, when the webmaster reported that he had received an email directly from GNet representative Matt Jacobson. which regarded a contest to win DVDs of the Dragon Ball Z anime, Dragon Ball Z video games, and the official iGuide DVD for Budokai 3. I visited GNet's website and found no mention of the iGuide. Fortunately, a few pages were archived on the Wayback Machine. Besides promoting the various segments included on the DVD and even offering downloads of some of the content featured, the website also provided a release date of November 16, 2004 to coincide with the game. It even acknowledged the various official and unofficial fan sites that it would sometimes consult for information. Among them, Narrated was included. As for the contents of the full DVD, I couldn't find an archive of it anywhere online. From this second round of research, my timeline doubled in scope. The information I had found so far was insightful, but limited by the awareness that each webmaster had. For instance, Kanzenshu didn't document GamePro's October issue, and Drainet didn't mention Shonen Jump's November issue. I figured there was more coverage out there that had just gone unnoticed, so I searched for public archives of any physical media that announced the game. This led me back to the Internet Archive. The first item I found there was the Atari E3 2004 Assets disc. The ISO image file contained a folder labeled Atari, which had subfolders for all of the publisher's upcoming titles. One folder was named differently as DBZ 2004 Lineup PS2 GBA. It contained a single Microsoft Word document that detailed an announcement to be read on April 23, 2004 in London, explaining that Budokai 3 along with Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors would be released later that year. I looked through the folder for Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors, but found no further mention of Budokai 3. The second item I found was the Atari CED 2004 press kit disc, which included information on two Dragon Ball games, Dragon Ball Z Boost Fury and Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors. I went through all of the subfolders for each game and only found a brief mention of Budokai 3. Boost Fury and Supersonic Warriors each had a press release on a Microsoft Word document. They were identical when opened and detailed an announcement to be made on April 30th in Beverly, Massachusetts. It was nearly identical to the announcement from the Atari E3 2004 Assets disc and only added Boost Fury to the list of upcoming games. The third item I found was the Atari Assets September 2004 disc. I opened it and this time found a folder specifically for Budokai 3. It had 3 subfolders. The first one, labeled Art, had 5 PSD files. I was able to open them using the Photoshop program GIMP, which revealed that they were some of the character images that regularly appeared when the game was being promoted in other media, like magazines or websites. The second folder, labeled Logo, only included a JPEG file of the final game logo. The third folder, labeled Screens, had dozens of screenshots from the game that also appeared in various magazine ads and promotional material. Of note, they showed that Cooler used to have a different idle stance, and the text color for counting damage and combos was yellow. The last disc I found was for Atari Assets October 2004. I opened it and found another folder for Budokai 3 that contained 3 subfolders. The folder labeled Artwork had JPEG files of the same characters that were on PSD files for the September 2004 disc. The folder labeled Logo had an EPS file of the game's final logo. As for the folder labeled Renders, it had a mix of JPEG, GIF, and PSD files showing renders of various characters. These images had also appeared in promotional material and publications, such as the Prima Official Game Guide. The October 2004 issue of GamePro, issue 193, was available on the Internet Archive as well. In the cover feature, found on pages 30 through 33, the editor Funky Zealot interviewed Atari senior brand manager Matt Collins about Budokai 3 and its numerous improvements over its predecessor. The various screenshots throughout the article showed what appeared to be an even earlier build than what was demoed in August. There were only 4 characters present: Goku, Broly, Cooler, and Gogeta. It also featured 2 maps, Mountains and Grandpa Gohan's house. A few details from the images implied how early this build was. For example, Goku in his Super Saiyan 3 form used the same stance as his base form and his long hair clipped through his right arm. The heads-up display, or HUD, for the victory counter had a red splash instead of just a red outline. Cooler's tail was not fully rigged in his final form. In Cooler's death move, Saucer Blade was transliterated as Sulphur Blade. I looked through every other GamePro issue from 2004 but didn't find any other announcement of the game prior to its release. I already owned the January 2004 issue of the official US PlayStation magazine, which didn't mention Budokai 3, so I looked through the other 11 issues on the Internet Archive and found that they didn't either. I next looked through all of the archive issues of Electronic Gaming Monthly from 2004 and found something. In the November 2004 issue, on page 110, there was a screenshot of Budokai 3 among other games that were set to release that month. While the remaining issues had no further announcements, I found a notable ad in the December 2004 issue. On page 103, there was a full-page advertisement for the official iGuide DVD of the game, which Draynet had led me to initially search out. Draynet had also transcribed an interview from the magazine Tips and Tricks, so I looked through every issue from 2004 that had been archived. I found the interview in the one dated October 2004, issue 116. On page 73, Daisuke Uchiyama shared that the game would play faster and feature improved cell shading, include the ability to teleport behind an opponent and use hyper mode, and the new single-player mode would be called Dragon Universe. The photos of Mr. Uchiyama also demonstrated that he was aware of North America's huge interest in the game. I looked through every other video game magazine I could recall from my adolescence and only found the game mentioned twice more. In PSM issue 90 for November 2004, there was a small blurb on page 54 of the preview section that stated the game would include about 40 characters total. In GMR issue 22 for November 2004, there was a brief preview on page 54 with screenshots and a few quotes from Mr. Uchiyama. As for the magazine Game Informer, I had been a subscriber since April 2004, so I quickly reviewed all of my issues from that year to confirm that no announcements of Budokai 3 had been made. The remaining issues from January through March were archived, but I found no mention of the game in them either. There were only so many North American magazines, so I expanded my search to include international ones too. This took me to various magazines I had never read, such as Play, Edge, and Joypad. While not every issue from 2004 was available, I did come across one that had discussed the game. In issue 143 of Joypad for July-August, on page 20 there were a few screenshots of Budokai 3, with the captions only stating they were included to whet the appetite of gamers looking forward to the next installment. I looked for any issues of the North American Shonen Jump on the Internet Archive, but number 23 for November 2004 wasn't there. However, I had purchased Shonen Jump number 24 back when it was first released and recalled it had discussed the game. It featured a cheat sheet with the commands for executing particular moves with various characters, and the notice at the top stated it was information directly provided to the magazine by Atari. Other physical media I already had in my collection included the Prima official game guides for the entire Budokai trilogy. While the first two didn't hint at Budokai 3, and the third one only contained content about the final release, they all provided insight into how closely the publisher Prima Games had worked with Atari to create the guides. With that in mind, I figured Atari might have provided a preview about Budokai 3 inside a guide for a different game they published around 2004. So I looked for any such Prima official game guides that had been archived besides the 3 I had, of which I found 7 more. I read them all and only found new information in the one for Dragon Ball Z Boo's Fury. On pages 121 through 123, the book featured screenshots of an early build of the game. I compared the screenshots here to the ones shown in GamePro issue 193 and deduced that these were from a later build. While the text color for damage remained yellow and the victory counter still had a red splash behind it, it included 2 additional characters, Piccolo and Majin Buu, as well as a destroyed variant of a stage, the destroyed Namek map. It also included a character roster that perplexingly confirmed that the What If Fusion characters Tianxia and Goku would return. While their Japanese names are mentioned in an internal file of Budokai 3, they didn't reappear in the final release. Since the list along with the screenshots were provided by Atari themselves, and Boost Fury was originally released in September 2004, this suggested that either an outdated roster was provided to Prima Games, or the roster was finalized late in development and thus it became outdated due to the lead time needed to print the book. I last searched for any archived issues of Weekly Shonen Jump and V-Jump, of which there was very little and didn't include any coverage of the game. I was unable to find any information on the Internet Archive and looked for other sources. The only other match I found was on the website Hidden Palace, which hosted a review version of the game that was dumped by member CKY. With a build date of September 27, 2004, it was a late prototype that predated the final release by a few weeks. Despite being a prototype, its serial number SLES 527.30 was identical to the original PAL release. I looked for content differences between the 2 builds but couldn't find any. From this 3rd round of research, my timeline changed only slightly. Initially, I had prioritized information with a clear author. This was both for ease of reference and to help point myself in the next direction. I realized that while internet forums could be filled with rumors, they sometimes preserved facts that only one person took the time to document. With this in mind, I began exploring forum threads for information about Budokai 3. The first one I found made a bold claim. On the website Digital Press, the member Neo NES Master created the thread PlayStation 2 Demo Disc on July 26, 2005. They listed various demos they had for sale or to trade, which included Budokai 3. They provided an email address, so I sent them a message, but it was now defunct. The second forum I found was on the website Earth's Special Forces, where member Logistics created the thread DBZ Budokai 3 Details Leaked on May 29, 2004. They provided details about new content and changes in gameplay. A response by member Hibiki, however, indicated that Logistics originally found this information from a video online. I wasn't aware of a video being revealed in May 2004, so I cross-referenced it and found a news update from GamePro. Using the Wayback Machine, I found that the editor Funky Zealot reported on May 28th that a video of the game had leaked, though they provided no link or source for it. I searched into what this leak might have been, which led me to the website Pojo. Most of Pojo's content from 2004 was no longer accessible, but a few pages were archived on the Wayback Machine. The only mention of a new video was one purportedly released by Dimps' website on August 28th, according to Draynet. Interestingly, the page also indicated that the package art of the limited edition was reported on October 12th. I cross-referenced this and found that EB Games had listed the limited edition available for pre-order as early as August 6th. The next forum I found had one of the longest threads about the game. On the website NeoSeeker, the member Super Saiyan Goku started the thread Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 Information Thread on May 19, 2004. The initial post included a brief chronology of various updates made to the thread. I reviewed them and made a correction to my own timeline. While the announcement on April 28th was reported by IGN first, the announcement on April 30th was reported by GameSpot's editor Justin Calvert several hours before IGN published their update. The total length of the thread was 32 pages, which allowed me to cover a lot of ground. On May 20th, member Drew Gooden provided a quote that was supposedly captured at E3 according to the website DBZ on PS2. DBZ on PS2 was now defunct, and though some pages were archived on the Wayback Machine, none of them included a source for the quote. I looked on other websites as well, but still couldn't find a source. On May 21st, member Wolf provided a link to a video showing footage of Budokai 3 recorded with a camcorder in France. This link to the French website La Legion Saiyan was no longer active. Fortunately, an archive of the link with the video was on the Wayback Machine. The video had no sound, showed gameplay from a very early build, and confirmed various characters. I inspected the channel logo on the top right of the screen and found that this segment was broadcasted on the French television channel Game 1. On June 2nd, member MB2K2 Gamers shared links to pages of a French magazine that had covered Budokai 3. Unfortunately, the links were now defunct and none were archived. On June 13th, they provided a link to an image of Gogeta fighting the character Janemba. Though the link was defunct, I found an archive of it on the Wayback Machine that revealed it was just an edited screenshot of Gogeta fighting Cooler in its final form. On June 28th, member Imatramp provided quotes about game content that supposedly originated from Dimps or Atari. I searched other websites but couldn't find an official source for these quotes. On June 29th, MB2K2 Gamers stated that Dimps' official website would release a trailer for the game on July 16th. Their website didn't go this far back anymore, but I found archives on the Wayback Machine. A news update on the main page stated that an information site for the game pre-opened August 27th, and an archive of that webpage from August 28th indicated it had featured a video. However, the content couldn't be viewed and the video itself was not archived. Imatramp also made a post on June 29th with links to Draynet that had translated pages about the game from a French magazine. Unfortunately, they were not archived. On July 24th, member Hardcore for Life provided a list of characters that had been supposedly confirmed for the game and cited the website My Favorite Games as their source. My Favorite Games was no longer active, but some of its pages were archived on the Wayback Machine. From an archive of the main page captured on June 23rd, the list was seemingly created on June 17th without any sources. I looked into other pages and found that this website might have also been the origin of the interview with Blue 7 Eve because the capture date with the interview was earlier than when Draynet reported it. I found that My Favorite Games had even hosted a video of Budokai 3 as early as August 22nd, but couldn't determine whether it was the trailer from GamePro or some other footage. I found more unsubstantiated claims, but the members who posted them acknowledged they were either unconfirmed or rumors, so I didn't actively try to disprove them. As for the claim of the characters Tapion and Android 13 being in the game, this seemingly originated from Draynet because member SS6Go2 credited it as a source in their August 17th post. On August 26, Imatramp posted a quote from another member named SSJ17B who reported that they had played the demo at the PlayStation Store. After reading their impressions of it, I found their descriptions of the gameplay most closely matched the IGN coverage from GameStar's Live. I continued to find posts with links to videos, but either the websites were not archived or any pages that were didn't capture the video. On September 11th, member Ultimate Taz shared a link to 4 new videos of Budokai 3 on IGN. The link was defunct, but an archive on the Wayback Machine showed these 4 videos were uploaded on September 10th. On September 15th, member Supadude transcribed a news update from GamePro stating that it had been shown a later build than the one previewed in the October issue. An archive of the page confirmed this update was posted September 14th and that it was written by the same editor, Funky Zealot, who penned the feature story in issue 193. On September 19th, Ultimate Task provided details about the game that matched the final version and stated that a new trailer would be coming soon to the official Dragon Ball Z website. This page for Budokai 3 was no longer active, though an archive was on the Wayback Machine. Unfortunately, the video couldn't be seen even when using a flash extension because the hosted file was not archived. On September 24th, member Legendary Brawly posted the first character list that matched the final release and stated that, according to Draynet, Atari had provided it. On October 1st, Ultimate Task provided a link to the French website Jeux Video that had a new video of Budokai 3. On October 2nd, member Stalex provided an alternate download link for the same video. Jeux Video was still active, but neither link redirected me to the video anymore. Fortunately, an archive of the page was available on the Wayback Machine. It indicated that Jeux Video's webmaster announced on October 1st that Atari would provide them a weekly video showcasing gameplay until the game released. Following the November 16th release date, this totaled 7 videos. On October 10th, both the members Revenger of Wasteland and SSJ Kenneth reported that Atari would reveal another trailer with 7 new characters on October 15th. SSJ Kenneth even provided a name of an Atari employee with a source link. Although I confirmed that Nancy Bushkin worked with Atari during that time, the link they provided was not archived, and I couldn't find a record of this other trailer online. I also found no follow-up from either Revenger of Wasteland or SSJ Kenneth on these 7 new characters. On October 15th, member Mystery Saiyan provided a list of the final roster, crediting not only Draynet, but Matt and Corey from Atari and Funimation as well. I continued to find more posts with screenshots and videos confirming various characters, as well as the occasional rumor about new content. I found no further announcements up until it released, and the thread was locked by Drew Gooden on November 22nd. I then moved on to the second largest thread that had chronicled Budokai 3 up until it released. Originally on the Daizenshu EX forum, the thread Budokai 3 Confirmation was created by Zyx on April 21st, 2004 with a link to EB Games for the Budokai 3 strategy guide. On April 22nd, member Ryu provided 2 links, the first to the website Game Cult and the second to the website Mirror Station. Both links were defunct and neither was archived, so I couldn't confirm what announcements, if any, were made. On April 23rd, member Nyogo shared an image that purportedly showed an early build of the game. There was no link on the post, nor could I find an archive of it. From Zyx's follow-up post, I inferred the image was from a magazine and showed Cooler and Broly. From a post by member Deus Ex Machina, the image also had a Z3 and was an advertisement of sorts. On April 29th, Zyx shared a link to the IGN article Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 Rises that officially confirmed the game. On May 7th, Nyoigo provided a link to an image with Broly. Although the link address was set to the website Jeux France, I was redirected to the website Gamekyo where an announcement for Z3 could be seen. Clearly labeled as such, this image appeared to be different from the initial one Nyoigo posted. There was also a small blurb at the bottom of the image stating when E3 was scheduled and that more information would come in the July issue of V-Jump. Therefore, I hypothesized that this announcement was pulled from the June issue. On May 21st, Nyoigo shared a link to a low-quality video of Budokai 3 on the fan site Anime Noten Goku. That website was defunct and the page was not archived. From the details Zyx provided about the video in a follow-up post, I initially believed it was the same segment that was recorded from the channel Game 1, especially since Nyoigo's post and the post on Neoseeker were both made on May 21st. On June 11th, Nyoigo provided a link for a video on La Legion Saiyan that he specified was new. From another follow-up post by Zyx, this second video Nyoigo shared was different but didn't provide much new information. I continued going through the thread and found many of the same rumors I saw on Neoseeker. However, some light was shed on a source. On June 19th, Deus Ex Machina provided a link to Draynet regarding coverage of the game from a French magazine. The link was again defunct and not archived, but they had translated portions of the magazine article into English. I continued to find even more rumors about the game's final roster, but noticed that Vegito EX had actively tried to dispel them. Eventually, I gained some insight into what the initial video Nyoigo shared might have been. On July 24th, Zyx provided a link to a video that they reported as being a higher quality version of a video that had been posted earlier in the thread. This link to the website Playscope was now defunct, but I found an archive on the Wayback Machine. The page indicated that the images and video hosted there were gathered at E3. Unfortunately, neither the images nor the video could be viewed. Regardless, this indicated that Budokai 3 was covered to some extent at the event. On July 26, Nyoigo shared a download link for this video. Unfortunately, it was not archived. On September 6, Zyx shared video links from the website NTL World. Although the site was now defunct and the links weren't archived, a follow-up post from them indicated that the videos were of gameplay recorded by a fan at a convention. On September 15th, Deus Ex Machina reported that they had an acquaintance who would be receiving an early version of the game to play for a video game magazine. Unfortunately, this was never followed up on. On September 17th, member Detective X shared links to the Australian and American Atari websites promoting Budokai 3. An archive for the Australian page indicated that first impressions about the final version were shared on September 16th. While the archive of the American page indicated the game was being promoted as early as September 25th. On September 30th, member B-kun shared that his issue of Shonen Jump had an article discussing the game. This meant that the November issue had been available at least as early as the end of September. On October 2nd, Ryu made a post with a link to the first gameplay video of Budokai 3 that Zhu Video hosted. On October 9th, member Son Goku GT shared their translation of a Spanish review of the final version from Narrated and provided a link to the original page. Luckily, it was archived on the Wayback Machine. According to this page, editor Nacho Ortiz published the review on October 8, 2004 and mentioned that Atari sent them a review version in preparation for the holiday season. Nacho Ortiz even included a photo of the disc. This made it the first documented review of the full game. On October 13th, Vegito EX expressed his excitement for the game's opening and provided a link to a video of it. The original page on GameSpot was now defunct, but an archive showed that this opening was made available to view on October 12th. On November 3rd, Deus Ex Machina provided a link to a video clip on the website iGuides that supposedly confirmed the final character roster count as 44. It was defunct, but an archive did indicate that various clips were available to view, although the earliest capture of the page was from November 15th. On November 5th, Ryu shared a link to an announcement of Bojack in the game. The link was not archived. On November 12th, Vegito EX shared audio clips that he had ripped from his copy of the game, which included characters not featured in the final roster. On November 13th, he clarified that the clips weren't carried over from previous games and were new recordings. On November 18th, he closed the thread. I searched for other forums and threads that covered the game, but couldn't find any. I thought it was possible that someone might have created a thread years later to share information. This led me to the website Reddit, where I found a thread on the board PS2 by member Rodney C76. They had asked for information about a promotional copy of the video game Kingdom Hearts 2 they had in their collection. Among the responses, member CrunchyFrog555 provided the most insight about why such a promo of the game existed, and also shared their history handling preview builds of other games as a writer for video game magazines. I was impressed with their knowledge, so I created an account to message them and find out if they had ever previewed Budokai 3. They eventually confirmed that they hadn't. I found another thread on the board DBZ. The member had since deleted their account, but they provided an image of two CDs labeled Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 and Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3, and asked for assistance in identifying what they were. They provided details about what the CD loaded on their computer and even included an image of a menu. There was a lot of speculation, but the most supported explanation was Vegito EX's, in which he stated they were likely from press kits. This CD wasn't documented online, nor was it on the Internet Archive, and since the member who made the thread had deleted their account, I couldn't reach out to them for additional information. However, I recalled seeing this exact disc myself in various toy stores back in 2004. It was a bonus CD that was included as part of a Dragon Ball GT action figure 2-pack set that also served to promote Budokai 3. This set was criminally discounted at one point, but had since become a collector's item, with anyone who still had one reluctant to open it and find out the contents of the disc. I found that some people even lamented that the 15 minutes of footage contained on it could possibly become lost media. I did find one video on YouTube by member Radar Force that showed the pack along with the sets promoting Budokai and Budokai 2. However, his were sealed just like the others. With this fourth round of research, my timeline changed considerably, with various blanks now filled in. The expression goes, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." This just reminds me that anything I watch is made up of a sequence of pictures. Therefore, a video, even a silent one, can have more to say than even the most compelling image. I felt this when I saw the preview footage of Budokai 3 from La Legion Saiyan. Now aware that several preview videos were hosted months before the game released, I sought them out and hoped to find more. IGN had shared 4 videos in August, so I revisited it first. Surprisingly, all these videos were still listed and accessible. They showcased rounds between Team Gohan and Majin Buu in the destroyed Namek map, Goku and Broly in the Grandpa Gohan's house map, Goku and another Goku in the mountains map, and Piccolo and Cooler in the plains map. Aside from missing some general polish, I identified a few differences between this preview build and the final version. 1. The victory counter on the HUD had a red splash around it instead of just a red outline. 2. The text color used when displaying damage was yellow instead of blue, similar to Budokai 2. 3. There was no background graphic when a clash was activated, just like in the previous 2 games. 4. The animation when transforming into a Super Saiyan was exactly like in the previous 2 games, instead of being character specific. And 5. The camera followed the player who lost the round, just like in Budokai 2. As for the missing polish, Broly's Blaster Shell was called Bluster Shell, Goku's Dragon Fist was called Super Dragon Fist, Cooler's transformation final form was called Four Form. There were no speed lines when a stage hazard was triggered, and a player didn't take any damage from a stage hazard yet. From the quality and audio of the videos, it was apparent that they had been recorded off television monitors and in a busy venue, as you could hear the sound of other rounds in progress. As for where the videos were recorded, I searched extensively but couldn't confirm if they were captured at the PlayStation Store, GameStars Live, or some other screening. Still, I was certain that the build played in these videos was the same one demoed at GameStars Live. On NeoSeeker, I came across another thread started by member Tomex on August 22, 2004. They shared that they would be attending a gaming convention from September 4th through the 5th where Budokai 3 would be playable. This lined up with GameStars Live in Docklands, London. Their follow-up post on September 5th stated that only Goku, Broly, Cooler, Team Gohan, Majin Buu, and Piccolo were playable. They even mentioned Cooler's unique animation when transforming. After finding this thread, I hypothesized that this same build had been used at the PlayStation Store, since the image of the demo's menu from DrainNet included Goku, Broly, Cooler, and Piccolo. The complete photo of Daisuke Uchiyama from the GameSpy interview, which was conducted during the demo event at the PlayStation Store, showed the same menu behind him with the header August version. What I found most surprising was that these same 4 videos were uploaded to IGN's official YouTube channel on June 23, 2011. Despite being footage of a preview build and available there for over a decade, I had never heard them discussed by anyone. When I found them, they each had less than 1,000 views apiece. I next looked through Zhu Video, where additional preview gameplay had been shown in October. The coverage they had for Budokai 3 was extensive and included a total of 8 videos with preview footage. Interestingly, their upload dates were from October 27th through the 29th, 2004. This was likely caused by a website update in the following years. Opening one of the videos showed that they were actually hosted via the website Dailymotion. Searching directly on Dailymotion for the account zhuvideo.com, I found that the 8 videos were titled Broly vs. Broly, Cooler vs. Broly, Goku vs. Cooler, Goku's Affront, La Revanche de Goku, Cooler's Affront, Cooler vs. Goku, and Goku vs. Broly. From watching them, it was clear that they showcased an even earlier build than what IGN had shared videos of. The main menu featured no music, had the header Proto version, and the title Budokai 3 was in a font different than the August version had used. The only available characters seemed to be Goku, Broly, and Cooler. The victory counter still included the red splash behind it, and the text for counting damage was still yellow. However, Cooler's first death move was called Destruction Beam instead of Destructive Ray. He didn't use a unique animation when transforming. His transformation was called Force Shape instead of Final Form. His second death move was called Sulphur Blade instead of Saucer Blade, and he finished the Dragon Rush with a generic attack rather than the Rapid Finger Beam. There were only 2 maps, the mountains and Grandpa Gohan's house, and their intro sequences were shorter with different shots. Broly was only playable in his legendary Super Saiyan form. Goku had a different grab attack, and his first transformation was called Kinkai Fist instead of Kaioken. As for the Dragon Rush, it was much faster, with a simpler interface, and didn't feature as many special effects. The maps didn't have stage hazards yet. The camera angle when the first attack in the Dragon Rush was successfully blocked was slightly different than the final version, and the Dragon Rush had a different final animation if the third attack was successfully blocked. Zhu Video also had 3 videos promoting the iGuide official DVD for the game. In particular, the second segment of Daisuke Uchiyama's interview provided insight into what helped shape the final version of the game.
Hi guys, my name is Daisuke Uchiyama. I work for Bandai. I have been chief producer of Dragon Ball Z Budokai series 1 and 2 and 3, and every day I work so hard, of course every night, and I'd like you to enjoy this game. The very big point we made this one is we tend to listen to the US fans' voices. This is a very big point. We had a lot of requests from the US fans, of course, and we added many of the features. We have several sources we get US fans' voices. For example, we often visit US Fansites to have an idea what fans are talking about. Also, we had a meeting with our partner company Atari US. We are having such comments from the Atari sales and marketing guys, of course. And also, we have many chances to talk with the people at E3, industry people, fan people, and all of the fan voices are integrated to this game. And now I'm convinced this kind of input was so successfully imported to this game.
According to Mr. Uchiyama, the feedback that influenced Budokai 3's development the most was from US Fansites, Atari's marketing team, and video game industry members present at E3. I soon found that GNet, the company responsible for the iGuides, had a bigger stake in Budokai 3 than I initially thought. On the website ICV2, a post on November 30th, 2003 reported that Funimation, which had dubbed Dragon Ball Z in North America, had signed a deal allowing GNet to create official DVD strategy guide for Dragon Ball Z video games. To round out my search, I looked through YouTube for videos previewing Budokai 3. I found a few videos with footage from the proto version, but their gameplay was identical to 3 videos already on Zhu Video. Member Marf the Betts uploaded the Goku vs Broly video on May 24, 2009. Member Sami Crosette uploaded the Goku vs Cooler video on June 5, 2010. And member Roche Faustinu uploaded both the Goku vs Broly and Broly vs Cooler videos on June 29, 2013. The earliest upload I found for an official trailer of the game was from member Carlos 2041 with the upload date February 20, 2007. It featured gameplay from the proto version that was different from what Zhu Video had. From the introduction sequence, it was clear that this was the same trailer that Drainet shared and thus the same video that premiered at Wizard World Chicago in August 2004. This exact trailer was also uploaded by IGN on their official YouTube channel on May 19, 2011. The trailer, however, was not on their website, nor could I find any archive of it confirming that it originated there. Another video I found was a purported trailer for Budokai 3 that had been shown at E3 2004. Uploaded on PlayScope's official YouTube channel on December 29, 2009, it was a preview that used an early build without any HUDs. What stood out to me was that it presented the same footage captured from the French television channel Game 1. The PlayScope video included a bit more at the start, but all of the quick cuts matched. What I found to be a mismatch though was the audio used. The music track Running Victory from the first Budokai game was played throughout the video, and while the cuts between characters had a specific timing, they didn't line up with any particular cues in the music. I looked into the possibility that this trailer was repurposed from elsewhere, which led me to a video uploaded on October 17, 2008 by member Super Kenji TH. While the title specified review, it was a preview of Budokai 3 with the exact same footage. The key differences were that it had an intro sequence from Atari, higher video quality, and a more fitting music track. Throughout the video, a portion of the song Stick 'Em Up by the artist Kwarashi played, and many of the cuts that seemed arbitrary before perfectly synced up now. I didn't know what program had shown the original preview, so I looked into all of the various programming that Game 1 had broadcasted back in 2004. I eventually deduced that the origin was Game Zone, a show with various hosts that provided the latest in video game news. On YouTube, the member 0OHackTaurus00 uploaded various broadcasts of the show from 2004. After going through them all, I noticed that the overlay for news would appear when they would discuss emerging details about a new game. This overlay, along with the channel logo, matched the Budokai 3 preview. I looked throughout YouTube and every other video hosting site I knew, but wasn't able to find the exact broadcast with the preview. However, I finally found video evidence that confirmed the game was shown at E3. On another broadcast uploaded by 0OHackTaurus00, there was coverage from E3 that featured a segment where GameZone correspondent Johan visited the Atari stand and spoke with Atari representative Anthony. He was about to discuss the games on display when the Budokai 3 preview began playing on a television monitor.
T-shirt Atari. Bon, on va parler un petit peu des jeux vidéo. Alors, est-ce qu'on a des petites images? Qu'est-ce que vous avez présenté ici?
Oui, on a de l'image. Tiens, bah regarde, tiens, ça c'est bon à voir.
Ah, voilà, alors ça, c'est du Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3.
Ah, déjà le numéro 3, hein.
Et déjà le numéro 3.
Avec quoi de nouveau là-dessus?
Bon, des petites choses nouvelles, du genre des personnages qui viennent de la version GT, la possibilité de voler maintenant librement et puis
On peut voler des poules.
Ça dépend
Tu as le droit de-
lesquelles.
Tu as le droit de parier. Tu as le droit de parier complètement. Alors
Non,
ici.
mais il y a aussi les filles, donc tu peux appeler ça des poules.
Ah d'accord. Oh non, alors là, oh là là, loin de nous. Non, pas de ça, pas de.
Anthony stated that the game would include characters from Dragon Ball GT and allowed the player to fly freely. This recording confirmed that PlayScope didn't upload the preview in its original form. I looked one more time for any other preview footage and was led back to Game 1. The member, Game 1 La Bonne Époque, uploaded a documentary titled Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 Le Making of. It was a half-hour program in which various DIMP staff members were interviewed regarding their role in the development of the game and provided a glimpse into the programming tools used to bring the game to life. While watching it, I could feel the genuine passion Mr. Uchiyama and the DIMP staff had when creating the final entry in the Budokai series. From the credits, I learned that Alex Pilot had been the key driving force behind this documentary. Searching his work on the French Wikipedia, I found that he produced the Budokai 3 making of documentary in 2005 under the production company Pocket Chami that he co-founded. The only other information I could find for Pocket Chami was in the No Life fan wiki. And although it provided exact dates for some of the documentaries that were broadcast on Game 1, only the year was available for Budokai 3. In the documentary, manager Takahashi Tsukamoto provided an email address that fans could directly message him at. To cover my bases, I sent Mr. Tsukamoto an email explaining the goal of my project, but as of this recording, I haven't received a response. One last point of interest I found from watching Le Making of was that among the gameplay footage it featured, a few clips were identical to the videos of the proto version that Zhu Video had received from Atari. I wasn't able to find any information on why this footage was repurposed, as the majority of the gameplay featured in the documentary was from the final version. I even sent a message directly to the staff at Zhu Video for additional information on the preview videos they shared, but haven't received a response as of this recording. From this 5th round of research, my timeline remained the same lengths, but I now had context regarding why everything on it was fitting the way it was. During my research, I was often steered towards a website not in English. The advent of virtual private networks, or VPNs, and Google Translate made collecting information from them largely a non-issue. However, this trend reminded me that I had to dedicate time to scouring international websites that might have covered Budokai 3. I started this next search by looking into the Japanese Wikipedia, which had an entry for Z3. Interestingly, I found it had fewer citations than the entry for Budokai 3 on the English Wikipedia, and didn't even mention the Taikenbon version. Looking for other Japanese content, I eventually found the website Museo, which allows members to host a virtual museum of their personal collections. The member Viru had an enormous collection of video game promos. Their section for PlayStation 2 by itself was vast, but I couldn't find any new information related to Z3. The next website I found was Crimson Ceremony, which was actively cataloging all PlayStation and PlayStation 2 demo discs released in Europe. The section they had for PS2 games was impressive, but the only Dragon Ball Z game mentioned there was Budokai 2. Recalling the coverage the game saw at events like E3 and the PlayStation Store, I looked specifically for sites that had covered the game from a journalistic perspective. This led me to Gamekyo, the same website that I was redirected to when I examined the announcement for Z3. Gamekyo, which identified itself as a social video game magazine for consoles, handhelds, and the PC, fortunately had all of its content from 2004 available. This was the only website I found that had covered GameStars Live with both video and photos. They also had a gallery which had a single related item. It was a photograph of a stand with television monitors and posters featuring the same box art used for Budokai 3's original PAL release. The photograph's resolution was too low to tell if the game was actually being played there, but it proved it had a presence. Their entry for Budokai 3 showed that they had also consistently reported news of the game up until it was released. The image galleries were intact and even provided screenshots I hadn't seen elsewhere, such as a few of the character Vegeta fighting Goku in the mountains map. The text color for damage was yellow, and Vegeta didn't sustain any damage going through a stage hazard, just like in the videos IGN had. Strangely, Vegeta was wearing a scouter, but he didn't have a tail or full battle armor in these screenshots. This suggested to me that another preview build in between the August version and the review version was distributed. I also found that Gamekyo was the first website to post the character portraits that were used in the Dragon Universe mode, with the gallery having a publish date of October 22, 2004, a few weeks before the release date. Their video gallery, on the other hand, was sadly defunct. I saw that a trailer was posted on September 2nd, which I expected because it was after the trailer premiere at Wizard World Chicago. I didn't expect to find links to 8 videos with titles matching the ones Zhu had received from Atari. Surprisingly, the URLs didn't redirect me to Zhu or Dailymotion, but rather to the original French Atari website. Using the Wayback Machine, I found an archive indicating that these 8 videos of the proto version were originally AVI files and publicly accessible for download as early as October 18, 2004. This was significant because Zhu had nearly given the impression that they were exclusive. Looking through archived pages from Atari, I found a news update published on October 11th that stated 4 new videos of Budokai 3 had been posted. Opening this update, I saw that the titles of the first 4 videos again matched the ones available on Zhu. Unfortunately, none of these AVI files were archived, and every attempt I made to download them failed. I looked further into trying to confirm when and where the gameplay of the proto version might have been captured, but wasn't able to find anything else about them. Since revisiting information about GameStars Live had led me somewhere new, I searched for other events around the world that possibly covered Budokai 3. I eventually came across the Wikipedia entry for Games Convention, a trade fair that occurred annually from 2002 to 2008 in Leipzig, Germany. I found additional information on the entertainment website Mitteldeutsche Zeitung. On August 17, 2004, journalist Arne Petrie reported that Games Convention would have approximately 270 participants from 12 different countries and be held from August 19th through the 22nd. I was unsure if the game had even been shown there, so I looked extensively for any coverage. The website Alami had several photos, but I found that none of them were related to Atari. It also didn't have any videos from the event. The website GameStar had additional photos, but none of them featured the publisher either. The only evidence I could find that Atari was present at Games Convention came from a post on the website Facebook. The member eJack Fest shared photos that they had taken at the event in 2004. These included a photo of an Atari banner with monitors displaying Driver 3 and a photo of the top of an Atari stand at the convention floor. Following this, I shifted my focus towards fan coverage of Budokai 3 that had been done outside of North America. I found the Brazilian fan site Kami-sama Explorer. It had a wealth of content, including a lengthy breakdown of the differences between different versions of the 3 games in the Budokai trilogy, and even a section dedicated just to Budokai 3 with a gallery of various promotional items. A more valuable resource I found was its news archive, which spanned decades and was still fully accessible. Therefore, I looked through every update that had been recorded in 2004. On May 7th, Kami-sama Explorer reported that an insert from an issue of V-Jump had announced Z3. On May 22nd, it reported that a video of the game had been published from a French channel named J-Pop no Tengoku. From looking at the screenshot of Super Saiyan 4 Goku, I made out the text Game 1 on the bottom left corner. I searched for J-Pop no Tengoku and found that it was actually a website. It was now defunct, and every archive of it didn't display any viewable content. The download link provided in the update also wasn't archived. On May 29th, it reported that a preview of Budokai 3 was found on page 9 of the V-Jump June issue. Looking at the bottom of the page, it advised the reader to follow up with Weekly Shonen Jump number 24 on May 10th, E3 2004 on May 12th, and the V-Jump July issue on May 21st. According to Wikipedia, the June issue of V-Jump, which announced Z3 on its cover, was released April 21st. This meant the June issue was very likely the source of this image Kami-sama Explorer had shared. This image was also possibly the same one that Nyogo shared on the Daizenshu EX forum back on April 23rd. On June 1st, it shared the page scans of an article from issue 142 of the French magazine Joypad. Written by editor Arnaud-san, the article reported that Daisuke Uchiyama had contacted them shortly before the start of Golden Week and invited them to visit the Bandai office the following Sunday. This article was noteworthy in that it provided details on gameplay concepts that wouldn't be reported elsewhere for months, a photo with concept art, and an image of characters in wireframe. Outside of a Jump publication, this was the earliest magazine coverage of the game I could find. Per Wikipedia, Golden Week lasts from April 29th through May 5th. According to the website Time and Date, April 29th was a Thursday in 2004. Since Arnaud-san stated that they were contacted before Golden Week began, I deduced that Mr. Uchiyama had contacted them the week of April 19th and that their visit on the following Sunday fell on May 2nd. Although the page scans were watermarked Genki DBZ, the news update didn't credit the website Genki DBZ. I looked for this fan site and found it was still active, but it didn't have much content nor hosted the page scans anymore. On June 11th, it provided a link to a video that confirmed various characters in the game. The link had been crossed out, but the URL indicated it was a download for a file labeled MOV02556.mpeg. This was the same file that had been shared earlier by Lalejun Seiyan. On June 14th, it stated that the new V-Jump issue would feature news on Budokai 3. On June 18th, it reported that the official US Dragon Ball Z website had posted images of the game. On July 27th, it reported that 3 videos of the game were available on DBZ on PS2. The link had been crossed out, but the page was archived, showing that the videos were of a preview distributed by PlayScope. I found that the video download links were also archived, but the video files weren't. Many of the other updates on Kami-sama Explorer provided information that had been reported on other websites, such as GamePro issue 193 being released, screenshots being added to GameSpot's gallery, the limited edition including a bonus DVD, a character roster being rumored, Zhu Video hosting a video of a Goku mirror match, and Atari's French website uploading 8 videos featuring matches between Goku, Cooler, and Broly. On October 27th, it shared an image of a purported beta of the game used for events. However, it didn't specify which events, and the image was identical to the review version of Budokai 3 that Mirror Station had provided a photograph of. On October 30th, it reported that new videos of the game were available on IGN. The final update before the game released was on November 6th when Kami-sama Explorer reported that new videos of the game were available on the website Play France. I sought out Play France and found it was still active with a section for the game. While the videos were no longer available, an archive on the Wayback Machine indicated that the trailer was specifically geared towards a French audience. Unfortunately, neither the video nor the preview that preceded it was archived. I then shifted my focus one last time towards forums that had been managed in other countries. The first one I found was on the Spanish website El Otro Lado. Their thread about Budokai 3, however, only echoed information that had been previously reported elsewhere, and I couldn't find any new details. The last forum I found was on the Japanese website FC2. While the thread about Z3 had over 3,000 posts, I found myself familiar with much of the information there due to my research into other websites and forums. Regardless, I read every single post and found some interesting insight. For instance, there was some debate among members in the thread whether America or France had the most recent news about the game. Some members also mused how they had seen smaller threads about the game eventually peter out before it even released. In general, however, the majority of the links to websites that members had provided in their posts weren't archived, and none of the links provided to download files were archived. One post that gave me pause was number 1208, published September 24, 2004 by member Soma. They lamented that Z3 had been announced a month before its predecessor Z2 was even released. Per the Japanese Wikipedia, Z2 was released on February 7, 2004. On post 1252, published October 2nd, member Super Goku posted a link to a video of Z3. The Japanese website Cited was still active, but its updates from 2004 were no longer accessible. Using the Wayback Machine, I found that this news update had linked to 4 videos from IGN showcasing various matches. It fascinated me that a Japanese website had credited an American one as its source of emerging information on a product being developed in Japan. This inspired me to inspect every news update that had been archived from Cited in 2004. Eventually, I found a news update published on February 4, 2004, reporting that Atari had announced 5 new Dragon Ball Z games for the next fiscal year, and among them was Dragon Ball Z 3. The source for this news was an article from the website 1UP. 1UP, which provided its own news stories, was now defunct and redirected me to IGN. Fortunately, the Wayback Machine had an archive of the page. On February 2, 2004, editor David Smith reported that Atari president Bruno Bonnell had announced Atari would publish 5 new Dragon Ball Z games from April 2004 through March 2005, which included a 3rd game in the Budokai series. This made it the earliest known public announcement of Budokai 3 in any form. On post 1437, published October 19th, member 0988 revealed that some confusion had been caused by Ju Video releasing videos of the proto version in October after IGN had already released videos of the August version in September. On post 2038, published November 7th, member King Choppa acknowledged that almost all the images of the game that had been circulating the internet were from outside Japan. The posts continued regularly until the thread concluded on December 9th. Following this, I couldn't find any other international websites, fan sites, or forums that provided new information about how Budokai 3 was announced to the world. From this 6th round of research, only 2 changes were made to my timeline, but one of them was profound. For almost 2 decades, I firmly believed that Budokai 3's existence had been prematurely discovered via a listing on EB Games. However, it amazed me to learn that a formal announcement mentioning the 3rd Budokai game had been publicly available and even came before the release of Budokai 2 in its country of origin. At one point, I had considered that this would have been the natural conclusion of the video. I had collected all the information that was publicly available online, searched archives further back than I thought possible, uncovered new information, and produced a clear timeline showing how Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 was announced. This changed when I took a break to watch one of my favorite anime from my video collection.
Hey, Sawtotes. When you became a hunter, what kind of work did you start doing?
I've always been interested in the restoration and protection of ancient ruins.
Oh.
When I first started, all I wanted to do was to make a name for myself by discovering new archaeological sites. But when I came across the work of another hunter, I realized the error of my ways. This hunter was spending his own money to ensure the restorations were being done properly. He wanted everyone to have the opportunity to see these ancient sites, including future generations. So, he opened them up to the public. Oh, he had such a passion for the work he was doing. I often found that more inspiring than the ruins themselves. To this day, his methods for preserving archaeological sites are the standard that everyone else follows. I've never had the chance to meet this hunter in person, but he has been like a mentor to me. One day I hope our paths will cross, so I can thank him in person for what his work has meant to me.
Yeah, he sure sounds like a great guy.
The simple truth was that there were limits to what I could produce if my research only came from what was freely available. I had found so many products related to Budokai 3 that had either been only partially documented or not documented at all because no one had ever purchased them with that intent in mind. So early on, I decided to set aside a budget specifically for this project and began actively looking for the physical media needed to complete my timeline. Some items were very straightforward to acquire a copy of. I bought GamePro issue 193 and personally confirmed that no pages had been omitted from the scan on the Internet Archive. To be completely sure, I also purchased a copy of the alternate cover variant. I bought Tips and Tricks issue 116 and confirmed that all of its pages were archived. I then bought PSM issue 90 and GMR issue 22 and again found that every page from each magazine was accounted for. When I bought Shonen Jump issue 23, I found that not all of the information discussing the game had been transcribed by Daizenshu EX. This consisted of only a few extra details about the limited edition. I did experience problems when trying to purchase copies of Joypad. The issues from 2004 appeared in auctions from time to time, but their sellers were unwilling to ship them to the United States. I eventually found a seller whom I was able to negotiate a shipping cost with for issue 142. I read it and confirmed that the article about the game had been fully scanned by Genki DBZ. While the rest of the issue also contained general coverage from E3, none of it featured Budokai 3. Earlier, I had also looked into any coverage from Wizard World Chicago in hopes that either images or video of the game had been caught. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any photos of the event and found only one video. On YouTube, member Cropesane uploaded a short montage of footage that they had recorded at Wizard World Chicago 2004. It didn't contain any material about Budokai 3 or Atari. With no other recourse, I bought the official 2004 convention program that was issued out at Wizard World Chicago. It confirmed that both Atari and Funimation had a presence there, but I found no mention of Budokai 3 in it. I considered how Atari had been the one to break news about the game multiple times, as well as how Funimation had worked with them to heavily promote it. With that in mind, I searched for any Prima official game guides of Atari published titles about properties licensed by Funimation. In the end, I purchased the guides for Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku 2, Dragon Ball Z Taiketsu, Yu Yu Hakusho Spirit Detective, Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors, Dragon Ball Z Boo's Fury, Yu Yu Hakusho Dark Tournament, Dragon Ball GT Transformation, Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors 2, and Super Dragon Ball Z. As for Dragon Ball Z Sagas, no guide was ever released for it. After reviewing all the books and bonus DVDs, I confirmed there wasn't any additional information. Unable to find new information from consulting American publications, I looked into the ones from Japan. I had purchased the V-Jump guides for both Z2 and Z3 over a decade ago, and recently added the guides for the first Z entry and Infinite World to my collection. The only link between the Japanese release of the game and Atari that I could find was from the V-Jump guide for Z3, which used the localized names for characters in each English heading rather than a direct translation. Unable to find any other Japanese books related to Budokai 3, I looked for Japanese magazines that had covered the game. After some time, I managed to buy a complete copy of V-Jump issue 6 from 2004. There was difficulty because this issue included both a promotional Yu-Gi-Oh card and an exclusive finger puppet of the character Don Patch from the manga Bobobo Bo Bobobo. Opening it to page 9, I confirmed that the brief announcement of Z3 was dates for upcoming information originated in this issue. However, my research showed that another Jump publication had a bigger announcement around the same time. Revisiting Comic Vine, I determined that the announcement either came from combo issue 22 and 23 that released for Golden Week on April 26, 2004, or issue 24 that released May 10, 2004. To ensure I found the correct one, I bought both. The combo issue had no mention of a Dragon Ball video game, but I confirmed that issue 24 had the insert previewing Z3 between pages 161 and 162. Not wanting to miss any other announcements made before November 16th, I looked for other issues of V-Jump. I bought issue 5, and while I found no mention of Z3, there was a section on pages 68 through 69 urging readers to enter the raffle for a copy of Dragon Ball Z 2 V. There was a flyer from V-Jump issue 4 that had been circulating online for over 20 years, but I had never seen the coverage from this issue documented anywhere. I also bought V-Jump issue 7 and found Z3 was mentioned twice. It was first discussed amidst coverage from the US Shonen Jump editorial team on pages 21 through 23. The game was covered again on pages 203 to 204, where it discussed the inclusion of 3 characters that debuted in Dragon Ball Z films: Gogeta, Broly, and Cooler. I then bought V-Jump issue 8, which was the last one to mention Z3 on its cover before the game was released in North America. The magazine included a slipcover with alternate art for Z2, and the reverse side had more screenshots of an early build of Z3. As for V-Jump issue 9, it didn't mention the game at all. At this point, I had exhausted all of the printed material I could find, so I began searching for media with video. The iGuide DVD for Budokai 3 had virtually no documentation at the time, and only a single stock image from 20 years ago would appear in search results. I looked for it online and found only 2 copies available for purchase. As one of them was missing the booklet, I purchased the complete one to ensure I wouldn't miss any details. It was only later that I learned the booklet just promoted visiting the iGuide website. As for the DVD, it contained tips on how to play in the new fighting engine, clear Dragon Universe mode, unlock additional content in the game, and more. There were also bonus videos with 3 specifically about Budokai 3. One was the full segment for the Daisuke Uchiyama interview, which had been split into 2 for a Ju video. The second was a high-quality version of the trailer that was shared by various websites in late summer 2004. And the third, which was the most fascinating to me, was Broly's biggest beatdown. It was a loose recreation of the main fight from the 8th Dragon Ball Z movie using various gameplay segments interspersed with clips from the actual film. Although it was very crude, it made me smile knowing that machinima had been made using Budokai 3 years before the idea ever crossed my mind. Considering that this DVD was released the same day as the game, this meant that the machinima was completed before the game even officially came out. I found even more content on the disc in the form of PDF files that GNet referred to as crib sheets. They contained all of the game content discussed in the video segments with additional detail and could be printed for reference at a fan's leisure. Having been pleasantly surprised by the iGuide DVD, I looked for any other promotional discs about the game. I bought the Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 exclusive bonus DVD that was included in the limited edition release. It contained the behind-the-scenes featurette Behind the Screens, in which the various voice actors discussed their experience recording dialogue for the game. This included a segment where Tiffany Vollmer, the voice actor for Bulma, recorded what appeared to be fighting sound bites.
Then, of course, the toll it takes on your chords is another story. I mean, my character screams for 5 pages at a time.
Yeah! Hi-ya! Hi-ya! Ha! Hi-ya! Get back! Ha!
Nice.
As for other content on the disc, it only included the same Budokai 3 trailer found on the iGuide DVD. I realized that Atari had provided behind-the-scenes material for many of the games they published in 2004, so I also looked into what promotional material those had. I bought the iGuide for Driver 3, the Run the Gauntlet, a Driver 3 film event DVD, and the Terminator 3 The Redemption iTips DVD. While they provided a developer's insight into their respective games, none of them mentioned Budokai 3. The last Atari promotional DVD I could find was the one issued out at Games Convention 2004 in Leipzig, Germany. It had a preview of Budokai 3, but it was a rehash of what Atari had shown earlier. The intro had been modified to show only a mock-up of what the box art for the PAL release would look like, and the music was swapped out for a different instrumental track. I did find a sliver of new content. The DVD opened with a montage of various games published by Atari, and at the 1 minute 37 second mark, there was a clip of the proto version that I found nowhere else. The Budokai Battles action figure set for Budokai 3 took me longer to secure. Dragon Ball toys from the brand Jakks Pacific regularly appeared online, but any that were still sealed in their box were uncommon, and I quickly found out that no one was willing to sell a Budokai Battles set for less than a few $100s. As for the CD itself, I only found a loose copy listed for sale once. However, it was incorrectly listed as a promotional copy of the game, and the auction was later prematurely ended by the seller. Still, I bided my time and was finally able to purchase one. I found that the CD featured a segment of raw gameplay, a scene from an episode of Dragon Ball GT, and the extras comprised of anime trailers. Curious to know if a preview build was used to record the gameplay, I watched it and was surprised. It was a match between Goku and Vegeta in the map Inside Buu, and they almost immediately transformed into their Super Saiyan 4 forms, just like their toys. The HUDs, models, and animations all matched the final release, but Goku said Ultimate Kamehameha when using the 10 times Kamehameha, and Vegeta said Final Flash when using the Final Shine attack.
Ultimate Kamehameha! Final Flash! Ultimate Kamehameha!
The voice clips didn't appear to be recycled from other games, as they sounded completely different from sound bites in the games before Budokai 3 and the one after. I looked at the audio files of the final version and couldn't find them. Finally, I looked at the internal data of the CD to see if I could find a date to help identify which specific build might have been used, but there wasn't one. I had no other versions of Budokai 3 to explore, other than the 3 I had owned for the last 12 years, so I searched for any builds I didn't have in my collection yet. The first one I bought was the best label release of Z3. As I expected, it had no new content. I next purchased the last version of the game ever released, the high-definition remaster of Budokai 3 included in the Dragon Ball Z Budokai HD collection. The soundbites in it were identical to the original version. After a more dedicated search, I was able to purchase a promo copy of the original PAL version of Budokai 3. While the case and disc pressing looked different, the ISO file inside was identical to the retail release and shared the same serial ID. The trial version of Z3 was something else I hadn't analyzed firsthand before. On YouTube, member GeekAder 2012 had uploaded a pair of videos showcasing differences between it and the final Japanese version. Still, I had to confirm what differences there might have been was in the internal files, so I bought my own copy. As the trial version was based on Z3, I didn't find any new unused content. And other than some of the menu options being disabled and additional characters being available by default, the gameplay was identical to the final version. The last item I will discuss only came after months of constantly searching both online and offline and remains the most expensive one I bought for this project. A playable demo of Budokai 3 labeled Preview August 2004. I loaded the disc and the immediate startup confirmed that this was the same preview build revealed at the PlayStation Store in August 2004. The menu was simple with minimal sound effects. It had 6 playable characters and only 4 maps to choose from. There were many minor differences in character animations, map details, and overall gameplay feel. I found 4 main differences after playing the demo for a few minutes. The first was in the Plains map, where the stage hazard didn't have the dinosaur try to eat the player before swatting them back to the fight. The second was that when Goku was in a Super Saiyan 3 form, his sidestep was a teleport with the proper sound effect. Very similar to how Frieza sidestepped in Budokai 2, and how Supreme Kai sidestepped in the final version of the game. The third was that the Dragon Rush was identical to the final release in animations and timing, but the background transition was more gradual and the effects overall less flashy. And the fourth was that a player wasn't limited to just 3 follow-up attacks when teleporting. As long as you had the necessary key, you could continue performing follow-up attacks if your opponent didn't make contact with the stage boundary or the floor. I found even more differences exploring the demo's internal files. There were too many to list here when comparing character textures, animations, and energy effects to the final version. Most were minor, but a few were significant, such as Supreme Kai not levitating during combat. The maps were missing a similar polish, as the Islands Destroyed map had no fallen plane in the background. The Cell Games Arena had a military truck inside, and the vehicles in the urban area map had simpler reflection textures on their windshields. There was one map I couldn't compare to the final version, and that was because it had been cut. As a modder of Budokai 3, I had already explored the files on the disc extensively for years. One of these files was the SLUS in the NTSC version, which cataloged various assets in the game and designated their specific address in memory. Something I found long ago and hadn't heard anyone mention before I began my research was that there was evidence that an additional map had been planned. Opening up the SLUS file from the Greatest Hits release in the program HXD, the memory addresses for the maps began at offset 34AED0. Looking at the addresses for maps like The Mountains, Cell Games Arena, and World Tournament Stage, I found specific markers for each one. For maps that had a destroyed variant like urban area, there was a marker below, while those that didn't change, such as the hyperbolic time chamber, had a smaller slot in memory because they lacked this flag to swap the map. The Supreme Kai Planet map, however, was different because it didn't swap out, yet still had a larger slot in memory. The line that would set the flag to swap out the map was blank, like it had been removed. Opening up the demo's SLPS file showed that the Supreme Kai Planet did originally have this flag, and opening up its demo version in the program Games Graphics Studio confirmed it with additional texture files for this destroyed variant. By importing the demo file into the final version of the game and writing a register in the proper location in memory for the SLUS file, I was able to play with the preview map again. It even had a different transition when the normal map was swapped out for the destroyed one. As for the other differences, I found most of them were in the images used for the HUDs, since the ISO file of the demo contained very little content for the other modes. For instance, the character portraits used in the HUDs were slightly larger with a wider color palette. Also, while the image for Bulma's character capsule was already in the game, her character portrait wasn't. Bulma herself also had a few differences. By using the program AFS Explorer, I found that the file size of her character bin was much larger in the preview version. I opened up her bin file in HXD and confirmed that this was just due to higher quality textures, with her character model being identical. Her animation data was slightly longer in the preview version too, but didn't feature a complete moveset when testing it out. Inspecting the demo's ISO file in Ultra ISO, I found that the final compile date was August 5th, 2004 at 21:49 or 9:49 p.m. Following this 7th round of research, I made a few additions to my timeline. Deciding to deeply research how Budokai 3 was revealed had demystified a lot of its history. For example, because I was able to fully view the various jump issues that previewed the game in Japan, it provided insight into how that information had slowly trickled online back in 2004, and over time only parts of it had been remembered. And being able to personally play the first demo of the game that the public ever played gave me context into why fans reported certain features the way they did. However, there were still many questions that I hadn't found an answer for, such as why raw gameplay of the proto version hadn't been available online until after gameplay of the August version was released, or if there was a preview build that included additional characters in Dragon Universe before those campaigns were excised, and if Bulma had ever actually been a playable character at one point. There were a few retrospectives about the Budokai series that had been published throughout the past 2 decades. Most of them even featured an interview with the producer of the trilogy, Daisuke Uchiyama. The questions Mr. Uchiyama was asked never touched upon these topics, and I also found that they didn't reach out to other individuals who were present during big reveals about Budokai 3. I determined that the only way to possibly answer these questions was to interview people who were in contact with DIMPS or Atari in 2004. I had no shortage of names. After reading many articles, watching dozens of videos, and sifting through interviews regarding Budokai 3, I've compiled a list of individuals that could possibly answer some of these questions once and for all. When I looked into how to initiate contact, I quickly discovered that most of them either didn't have a presence on social media, or the contact information they had shared publicly at one point was long outdated. I eventually did find a website where half of the people on my initial list did have some kind of presence: LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, however, you can't directly message a member who was outside of your contact list. A member had to directly approve your contact request, and you can't view profiles of certain members if your social network wasn't large enough. Fortunately, LinkedIn had various membership levels with specific privileges attached to each one. In particular, purchasing the basic premium subscription provided a member 5 in-mails per month. These could be used to directly message any visible member on the website regardless if they were on your contact list or not. As a result, I purchased a premium subscription to ensure I could try to contact any leads and renewed it as needed to acquire additional in-mails. There were 3 people on my revised list that could shed the most light regarding both the type and amount of content that was cut from the final version of the game. The first was Atari associate producer Donnie Clay. In the Prima official game guide for Budokai 3, he was interviewed and stated that he both answered emails from staff in Japan and was responsible for sending builds of the game out to people. If this information was correct, then that meant Mr. Clay would have the most knowledge of where the proto version had been, as well as the total number of builds that Budokai 3 had before reaching gold status. The second person was Funimation script supervisor and Okatron 5000 associate producer Andrew Rai. In the Behind the Screams featurette, he went over his responsibilities and confirmed that the script for the game was unusually long at about 600 pages.
How many pages is this script? Approximately 600. Is that unusually long? Yes. All the Godfather movies in script format maybe would be this big. Maybe all the Star Wars movies, all 6, would be this big.
If this information was correct, then he would be able to most accurately estimate how much of the dialogue in Dragon Universe had been cut, and even identify if whole characters were cut as well. The third person was Funimation voice actor Tiffany Vollmer. In the same documentary, there was a segment where she recorded various fighting sound bites for Bulma not found in the final version. Moreover, Miss Vollmer was credited as having voiced both Bulma and Kid Bulma in the end credits for the game. In the final version, there was unused audio from the character Kid Goku's Dragon Universe mode, where a younger Bulma does speak with him via radio.
Goku? Goku? Do you read me?
Hey, that's Bulma's voice. Where are you, Bulma?
I'm on the radio. Listen, you seem to have gone to the future in a time machine.
Oh, a time machine. Like one of those thingies you wear on your wrist, right? So that's what it is. Wow, it must have belonged to a giant.
Anyway, I'm trying to track down where the time machine came from, but I can't quite figure it out. But someone sent it back for a reason.
So I'm in the future. You know, I have a bad feeling here, like there's someone really evil close by. They must have sent it.
If Ms. Vollmer could provide clarification on the direction she was given when her dialogue was recorded, it would definitively answer what Bulma's original role in Budokai 3 was planned to be. I sent Mr. Clay, Mr. Rai, and Ms. Vollmer each a message introducing myself, explaining the purpose of my project, and asking if they would be willing to be interviewed. As of this recording, these 3 haven't responded. I then focused on finding more information about the proto version. From all of my research, I concluded that this build's strongest connection outside of Japan was to France, because Atari France's website had hosted the only raw gameplay videos of it, and the only video coverage about Dimps' development of the game was produced for the French television channel Game 1. Thus, I sent a message to Renaud Marine Sedgwick, who is the European web manager for Atari, Eilish Wynn, who is the game's localization project manager for Atari Europe, and Marie Sliwa, who is the printer materials project manager for Budokai 3 in Atari Europe. As of this recording, these three also haven't responded. After that, I shifted focus towards Atari in North America. The trailer for Budokai 3 that had premiered at Wizard World Chicago, which was uploaded by IGN years later and included in both the exclusive bonus DVD and the iGuide DVD, had featured gameplay from the proto version that was different than the gameplay the videos Atari France had posted online. This suggested to me that the North American Atari branch could have possibly had a copy of this build to either capture footage themselves to create the trailer or provide to a production team to create one. To hopefully gather details, I sent a message to Michael Cucciarella, who was the senior producer for Dragon Ball Z games from June 2002 until April 2004, Anthony Ma, who was a QA lead for Budokai 3 at Atari, Jeff Sering, who was the Atari brand manager when Budokai 3 was under development, and Mike Webster, who was the Atari senior brand manager throughout 2004. As of this recording, these four haven't responded. On a lark, I sent a message in Japanese to Daisuke Uchiyama, who was the chief producer of the game at Bandai. As of this recording, he hasn't responded. Throughout my research, the only article that reported a hands-on experience with the proto version was from GamePro issue 193. Therefore, I tried to find its author, Funky Zealot, in order to get clarification on when and where this build had been played. This required several extra steps. In the Entertainment Weekly article GamePro Shuts Down in Memoriam, editor Darren Franick wrote that the editors of the magazine had used avatars instead of their real names when the magazine was still running, and that one of the reasons for this practice was to create the impression of a larger pool of staff. After the magazine ended, several former editors revealed which avatars they had used during their tenure at GamePro. There was even a list of writers who supposedly worked for GamePro on the website Magazines from the Past. I found that none of them had any association with the alias Funky Zealot. I next looked for other publications that Funky Zealot had written for and found two of their articles on the website Arnet. They didn't have any contact information. Using the Wayback Machine, I found an archive of the email submission form that was used to contact Funky Zealot on GamePro, but it was now defunct. To cover my bases, I looked for the earliest mention of this alias online and found it was on an archive of the GamePro review of Budokai 2. While this review was published online in 2003, I found it was printed in GamePro issue 184 for January 2004, which I already had a copy of in my collection. From the scan of GamePro issue 183 from the Internet Archive, I compared its masthead with the one from issue 184. The only change I found was that their online production intern had left in 2004. Issue 183 also didn't mention Funky Zealot in it, which suggested that this editor had already been part of the GamePro staff and simply began using an additional alias at the start of 2004. Unable to find Funky Zealot's real name, I resumed trying to contact the ones I did know. Matt Collins was the Atari senior brand manager when he was interviewed regarding Budokai 3. Looking at his work experience on LinkedIn, I found that he was the senior brand manager at Atari from July 2002 until July 2004, after which he became the director of marketing. This meant that Funky Zealot had interviewed him at the very latest in July 2004, and thus the proto version, which the article had photos of, must have been compiled around June 2004. I sent Mr. Collins a message introducing myself and explaining the goal of my project, and he agreed to be interviewed. Regarding the preview build featured in GamePro, he stated, "I believe it's most accurate to say that build was a beta," but clarified that he could be incorrect. Mr. Collins also elaborated with the following. Print magazines such as GamePro had lead times of about 90 days. That would have meant that in order to make the October issue available to buy in September, GamePro probably would have required a build sometime in June. Also, in those days, Sony would have required the final Goldmaster 45 to as many as 60 days prior to release to the general public. That would explain why the GamePro build was different from the preview event in San Francisco in August. I suspect both were beta builds, as I recall that all the Budokai titles I worked on spent at least a couple months being QA'd and tuned by DIMPs to get the feeling, reactivity, and balance players of fighting games expect. It's also possible that DIMPs didn't make the entire game available in that June GamePro build in order to hold back certain features, moves, and/or characters. He then introduced me to Jeremy Sneed, his good friend who was the CEO of Media Juice Studios and the former licensing manager at Funimation when the Budokai series was being released. Mr. Sneed initially believed he might have had a copy of the proto version, but eventually confirmed that he instead had a preview build of Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Lastly, I asked Mr. Collins if he knew Funky Zealot's real name, to which he stated that he no longer recalled who from GamePro interviewed him back in 2004. He suggested, however, that I try to contact the staff who worked at GamePro as well as at competing magazines, since it had remained a small industry. I next briefly interviewed Jared Ria, who had performed quality assurance on Budokai 3. He stated that he only vaguely remembered it and the work only concerned standards and practices. I next sent a message to Matt Jacobson, who was the associate producer, writer, and production assistant over the iGuide DVD for Budokai 3. He also agreed to be interviewed. Mr. Jacobson confirmed that he played through the game to develop strategies for the DVD and both wrote content and captured gameplay footage for it. In addition, he also clarified that he coordinated an email blast to key Dragon Ball Z influencers and fansites of that time to promote the game. Although Mr. Jacobson no longer recalled any exact dates or names, he stated he believed the email blasts discussed release dates for both the game and iGuide, as well as possible contests and content ideas for the sites. Watching behind the screens, I had found one line of dialogue that I recognized from the unused content on the final version of Budokai 3. In a segment featuring Phil Parsons, the voice actor for the character Nappa, a line that would have been used when playing as Nappa in Dragon Universe was heard at the 21-minute 19-second mark.
With a lot of disdain on this next line.
Rolling. Vegeta, I'm sick of taking orders from you! Huh, you look tougher than these other wimps, but you're still no match for me! No! Ha ha ha! Did you really think a piece of low-level trash like you could defeat me? Vegeta, I'm sick of taking orders from you! I'm taking over, starting now!
You poor fool! No, impossible! I am the Prince of all Saiyans! I can't be defeated like this!
Ha ha! Like I said, Vegeta, I'm taking over. Now I call the shots around here.
Despite the age of the game, one of Mr. Parsons' most iconic roles has remained Nappa. He was also on LinkedIn, so I sent him a message and he agreed to be interviewed as well. When I asked Mr. Parsons if he recalled the date when he recorded his dialogue for the game and interview segment for the documentary, he responded, "I recorded my lines for DBZ Budokai 3 on the morning of Tuesday, May 25th, 2004. I don't specifically recall doing the discussion part you're describing, but the next session I had with Okratron 5000 wasn't until October of that year when I recorded Nappa's lines for DBZ Sagas. So it's safe to say I made those statements on that same day." In regards to dialogue that he recorded for Nappa's campaign in Dragon Universe, he stated, "It was only a 2-hour session that day, and I don't recall anything specific about the lines. Over the years, all the games sort of run together in my memory. The exception to that would be the Kakarot game, where I did record quite a bit of dialogue. Finally, I asked him if he had ever seen a preview build of Budokai 3, to which he said, "Unlike anime dubs, we generally see no footage or builds when recording for video games. It's all done very quickly. Occasionally, we might see a brief prototype character animation in some games, but in the case of DB, we're all quite familiar with our characters, so there's no need for even that." Mr. Parsons did clarify to me that he could only speak for his experience and that other voice actors might have seen footage or even a build of the game at some point. Returning to the magazine coverage I had found about Budokai 3, I revisited the article from Joypad. The author ended the piece with the alias Arnaud-san. I searched extensively online for a name attached to that particular handle and eventually found one. On the French Nintendojo website, Arnaud-san was interviewed by one of its staff. In particular, they shared that his name was Arnold Frey. I was unable to find an exact match on LinkedIn, but I did find an Arnold F, and his experience indicated he had worked as a Japan-based correspondent for various publications in 2004, including Joypad. I sent him a message introducing myself and explaining the goal of my project. Fortunately, he confirmed he wrote the article and agreed to be interviewed about his coverage on Budokai 3. In regards to his visit to see Mr. Uchiyama at DIMPS, Mr. Frey confirmed that he visited them on May 2nd. He also added, "The build we played is from February 26, 2004, 15/21/32. When I asked him how he had discovered the build date, Mr. Frey responded, "It was mentioned at the bottom at the screen of pics I took but didn't use in the article." This date was incredibly significant because it actually predated the final version of Budokai 2 released in the world. Back in 2004, the Japanese magazine V-Jump held a sweepstakes in which 2,000 readers would be given a copy of a revamped version of the game known as Dragon Ball Z 2V. Despite the game's rarity, a copy of its ISO image file had been available online for some time. Acquiring an authentic and complete copy of the game, however, wasn't as easy. I had one in my collection and inspected its contents. I reviewed the date for each file and found that the last folder compiled had an internal date of February 26, 2004 at 22:38 or 10:38 p.m. This meant that the first known playable prototype of Budokai 3, which was shown in both V-Jump and Joypad, was compiled hours earlier at 3:21 p.m. on February 26, 2004 than the final build of Dragon Ball Z 2V that same day. I revisited my notes because I had come across two names while looking for the demo of Budokai 3. A preview build of the PlayStation 2 video game Superman Shadow of Apocalypse was listed for sale on the website eBay. On the disc itself, notes about how to handle the game were written with a black marker, and the contact name provided was Matt Frary. The publisher Infogrames had actually been rebranded as Atari in 2003, and even its original corporate website still provided press releases on announcements of Atari published titles for some time afterwards. I found Mr. Frary on LinkedIn, and his work experience indicated he had been the senior public relations manager at Atari throughout 2004. I sent him a message asking if he would be willing to answer some questions about Atari's involvement with Dragon Ball Z, and he agreed. Mr. Frary explained to me that Atari had two different publishing offices back then, one in Los Angeles, which is the one he worked at, and the second in Beverly, Massachusetts, which handled the Dragon Ball Z games. He elaborated that he was only involved with the Dragon Ball Z license once because the public relations staff from the Beverly office was too sick to travel, and he instead went on tour to provide demos for that specific DBZ title. He even mentioned to me that Eric Reynolds was the Dragon Ball Z PR manager when he was at Atari, and that I could try contacting him for more information. I asked Mr. Frary if he could recall which Dragon Ball Z game he had provided demos for, but as of this recording, he hasn't responded. I acted on his advice and found Mr. Reynolds on LinkedIn too. I sent him a message explaining that I had spoken with Mr. Frary and if he would be willing to answer a few questions about his time at Atari. As of this recording, he hasn't responded either. There were also several pre-release builds of Atari-published games that were being auctioned around the same time, and I noticed a name written on them that had been crossed out in black marker. While most of these discs had the name completely marked out, I made out one on a few of them and it was the same: Jason Hill. Mr. Hill was on LinkedIn, but his work experience only listed him as the manager of public relations at Atari from 2001 to 2002. This was odd since the pre-release builds issued out in his name were from 2006 and onwards. I sent him a message, but he didn't respond. Searching for another means of contact, I found an article from the Auburn University website which detailed Mr. Hill's work history and quoted him as having a collection that stands at 145 consoles and almost 3,000 games. I sent him a direct email asking him if he would be willing to answer a few questions about his time at Atari, and he agreed to be interviewed. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to answer anything about Budokai 3 since he confirmed that he left Atari at the end of 2002, which he explained was when operations for public relations at Atari's office in Beverly, Massachusetts were consolidated into their main office. Without any other leads, I tried one last time to make contact with Funky Zealot. I took Mr. Collins' advice and sent messages to individuals who possibly had worked with this author. I first messaged Chris Slate, who is the editor-in-chief at PSM, Paul Kurthoys, who is a senior editor at GamePro until August 2004, Mike Wigan, who is also a former senior editor from GamePro in 2004, and Dan Su, who is the editor-in-chief for Electronic Gaming Monthly. Of these three, only Mr. Su responded, and he stated that he didn't know who Funky Zealot was. For my second batch, I messaged GamePro Senior Associate Editor Lindsay Young, Managing Editor Jennifer DeGraff, Assistant Editor Frank Parassi, Assistant Editor Joe McNeely, Editorial Intern Tim Ung, Editorial Intern Ryan Jones, Editorial Intern Ling Ungo, GamePro.com Senior Editor Wataru Maruyama, Associate Editor Sean Malloy, Senior Editor Dan Amrich, Copy Editor Pete Babb, Editor-in-Chief Wes Nihe, and Director of Editorial and Creative Services Francis Mao. From these, only 4 responded. Mr. Babb said he didn't know who had used that particular pen name. Mr. Mao said he didn't have any information about that article. Mr. Amrich informed me that he didn't know since he left GamePro in 2003, but advised me to contact the Video Game History Foundation for additional information. He explained to me that the assets of the article would have been provided by the publisher, and thus it was very unlikely that Funky Zealot had captured the screenshots themselves. I then sent a message to the Video Game History Foundation and received a response from preservationist and historian Frank Cifaldi. Mr. Cifaldi stated they didn't have more information but provided me the raw screenshots from the preview that were used in the article. This set included an image that was unused by GamePro, which featured Super Saiyan 3 Goku attacking Broly during a Dragon Rush. As for Mr. Nihe, he told me that he believed the person who had used Funky Zealot was Aki Sugawara. In issue 193 of GamePro, Aki Sugawara was listed as the international news editor. I found Mr. Sugawara on LinkedIn and sent him a message asking if he wrote the article. He confirmed he had and also agreed to be interviewed about it. Mr. Sugawara explained to me that he was GamePro's de facto Dragon Ball Z correspondent in 2004, and although he no longer remembered much, he did provide some much-needed insight. In regards to the cover story, Mr. Sugawara stated that the lead time from playing the preview build and the magazine being published was 2 to 2.5 months. He also stated that he likely visited the DIMS office in Osaka, Japan, because he never visited the Atari office in Massachusetts to preview any demos. As for the online article published May 28, 2004, Mr. Sugawara stated he didn't recall the source of the leaked video previewing Budokai 3. Regarding the online article published September 14, 2004, he stated he didn't recall the name of the specific build played or from which office it came from, but that much of the time, the preview builds were in Japanese. Thus, my interview with Mr. Sugawara provided the last new piece of information about Budokai 3 I would find. Despite my best efforts, I was unable to find any way to establish contact with Alex Pilot for clarification on the gameplay of the proto version featured in his documentary. To completely cover my bases, I had asked every individual who agreed to be interviewed if they still knew of anyone who possibly had more information about the proto version or its whereabouts. Only Mr. Collins was able to assist. With that said, I believe I had learned the reason why I could only find a single preview build of the game. According to Mr. Frey, he had to visit the DIMP's office in Japan to play the alpha version of Budokai 3. According to Mr. Sugawara, he didn't play the proto version in an Atari office and most likely visited Japan to play it inside the DIMP's office. According to Mr. Parsons, the English dub for the game didn't begin until May 25, 2004 at the earliest. And for Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 Le Making of, the cleanest source of gameplay from the proto version came from DIMPS. From all of this, I hypothesized that the alpha version and proto version never left Japan, because any magazine coverage featuring them were either reported from within the country or an editor from an overseas magazine had to visit the DIMP's office directly to cover it. As no source has ever confirmed a hands-on demonstration of the game at E3, I believe that the proto version was never played in North America. My research verified that one preview build of Budokai 3 did leave Japan. This was the August version that had been previewed in San Francisco, California, and later in Docklands, London. From various articles and some gameplay videos themselves, it was apparent that multiple copies of the game were played by the public at the same time. Out of this unknown number of pressed copies, at least one of them wasn't returned to Atari or DIMPS, and later ended up in the hands of an independent party. That was the same copy that I eventually acquired. After an ace and final round of research, a few facts that I never expected to learn were added to my timeline. And that's the end. This video isn't perfect. There's so many things about Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 that are unknown. And as more time passes, such things will likely never be known. Regardless, I accomplished what I had set out to do with my research. I revisited the game in more detail than I ever had before, created a clear timeline with exact dates for milestones up to its initial release date, and uncovered new information about it. I began modding Budokai 3 just before my 17th birthday. I am currently 34 years old. For over half my life now, I haven't gone a single day without thinking about this game at least once, even if just for the briefest of moments. It's because of that personal history that I wanted to know if any of the people I interviewed also had fond memories about their time with Budokai 3. A couple of them did, and gave me permission to share in this video. Mr. Collins had this to say: "Working on Dragon Ball Z video games, including Budokai 3, has been a high point of my career. It enabled me to work with some of the most talented and creative people I've ever known and travel to some amazing places, especially Tokyo. DBZ rightly has earned a place alongside timeless entertainment brands like Mickey Mouse and Batman. I'm honored to have been a steward of Dragon Ball Z and its growth in the video game category. Mr. Sneed said the following: Budokai 3 was a lot of fun. I enjoyed working with the developers, Bandai, Toei Animation, and playing my role at Funimation. The game did really well, and I think some of the licensing and marketing efforts my team and I and the fine folks at Atari put into it directly contributed to that success. As for Mr. Frey, he did respond, but not with a memory of his own. He instead sent me something that created a new one for me. A personal autograph from Daisuke Uchiyama himself. Mr. Frey told me that sometime after I interviewed him, he met with Mr. Uchiyama. I don't know the specifics of what they discussed, but Mr. Uchiyama, as a gesture to one of his fans, autographed a board specifically for me. Seeing it the first time floored me. Mr. Uchiyama had been an executive producer at Bandai when Budokai 3 was developed. Since then, he had become the president and CEO of Bandai Namco Inc. When I had started this project in March 2023, I had visualized him as nigh unreachable. Yet, even if just for a moment, he was aware that I was a fan of his work, and he acknowledged it despite the last game literally being decades old now. 12 years ago, I made a tribute video sorts about Budokai 3 and uploaded it onto YouTube on the 8th anniversary of the game's initial release, November 16, 2012. I made it in 4 days, heavily referenced some videos I was watching back then, and is something most people wouldn't be proud to show so many years later. But I enjoyed making it, and genuinely wanted to celebrate a video game that meant so much to me by showing everything that a modder could do with Budokai 3 at that time. And to the surprise of some, I made a companion video that I originally uploaded onto YouTube on the game's 16th anniversary. It was no longer an example of the very best a modder could do, but it was also made in 4 days, and I put just as much passion into it as I did into the first one. Many years ago, I came across a saying that stuck with me and would remember it whenever I started making another mod for Budokai 3. It went, Hollywood says it ain't done till it's a trilogy. And right now, that trilogy comes to a close. What was part 3? You were watching it. This was Happy Birthday Budokai 3 Part 3. The game officially turned 20 years old on November 16, 2024. I had planned to release this video on that day and came close, but held off so that I could make it the best I could with what I have now. To everyone who helped me make this video possible, thank you. I thank all of the editors, correspondents, and journalists who documented milestones about the game across magazines, broadcasts, and websites. I thank all of the webmasters who chronicled information about the game in their fan sites. I thank all of the fans who participated in discussing the game in forums and threads. I thank all of the fans who took the time to record content and dates about the game as they were revealed. I thank all of the people who archived the many web pages and media files that referenced the game. And I thank Akira Toriyama for creating Dragon Ball for all of us to enjoy. I will also thank some people on a personal level. I thank Jared Ria, Matt Frary, Jason Hill, Dan Su, Pete Babb, Francis Mao, Dan Ambridge, Frank Cifaldi, and Wes Nihe for taking the time to respond to my inquiries. I give a special thanks to Matt Collins, Jeremy Sneed, Matt Jacobson, Phil Parsons, Arnold Frey, and Aki Sugawara for giving me the opportunity to interview them about their time with Budokai 3. And I thank Daisuke Uchiyama for producing Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. There were many Dragon Ball video games before and after Budokai 3, but his vision for this entry made it something truly special to a particular group of fans. If it hadn't left the impression it did, I never would have considered it worth the effort to start modding, and half of my life would have gone differently. It took almost 2 years to finish this video, and more passion than the previous 2 combined to see it through to the end. This will likely be the last time I celebrate the game like this. So without further ado, happy birthday, Budokai 3.